Hi, we are back with another Counter-Strike map analysis video. This is Mocha by Bevster and Tronic. Tronic spells his name with a 0 instead of an O, so he's a cool guy like me. And just for that, I want to give him some props. Specifically, what the fuck is that prop? Anyway, it's probably not even considered a prop, but we got Chuck the Cuck here, so have some fun with him. Anyway, this is Mocha. This is T-Spawn. Let's get to it, shall we? So we're going to go to A first, actually. It's the quickest area. Mocha is a map that, at first, I actually thought, because my first experience was playing CT and immediately going to B, and you'll see why that's bad first impression when we get there. Because graphically, it made the map look like a lo-fi, just, you'll see. But because of that, I wasn't initially expecting the level of detail that I would then find literally everywhere else on the map. So it was kind of surprising. Even with the fact that there's, you know, props and trims and other sorts of foliage and all that stuff, it still does feel, generally speaking, kind of like I guess you could, in terms of detail and visual, like clutter versus being clean cut, it's like a cross between basalt and chlorine. It's somewhere in between those two. And so to me, Mocha so far feels like a map that would be one of the maps that like the Counter-Strike community would be primed to accept, because it's visually simple without being so stripped down that it's more appealing to some like the 1.6 crew or something, who the older fellers that are more accustomed to the stripped down nature of a lot of those maps and actually prefer that level. You know, generally speaking, I think a lot of CS players, modern CS players, prefer the more like visual gravy and stuff like that, visual pizza, if you will. Some hops. So anyway, there's that. Let's go all the way back over here, because I just wanted to point out you cannot get up here without a boost. And the reason for that is because it allows you to get here faster. And that's one of the more puzzling things about this area, is like I don't really know what it offers you that's so big of a deal, because just to send one guy here faster, is it even really that much faster? I mean, let's imagine, right? We spawn here. It's where we are. And we just do this. We hold W. And we're here, right? So that takes us about 6 seconds. And this, we jump up on top of a teammate, and then we're here. And that's still, that takes us longer. So why does this need, why? Hello? So it doesn't make it faster, and it's not like, I mean, oh, maybe it's so that we can access this area easier, but again, you can just self-boost onto here anyway. This is a pretty sick angle. If this is intentional, I'm supposed to be able to get up here. You could do some crazy overpass-esque boost stuff where you have some guy here, right? Idiot. Double idiot. Well, I think he's stuck as opposed to actually being there legitimately, but whatever. The idea is like you could probably do something like this. Where then you stand on the man. There you go. Now you can see. Anyway. So I imagine you could do some crazy ass boost stuff where, you know, because you're sort of over here, that'll give you a line of sight into the other area, probably. The area that's further down there. It's like A-long, if you will. And it'll also give you a nice peek into anybody who's over here. So maybe that could be like a late round situational thing. But I don't know, man. I really feel like, for one, this is probably going to get patched out as opposed to being a permanent thing, which is unfortunate, because I would really like that to be a real thing. I like crazy-ass boosts like that, even if they don't make sense. I think that that's what makes the game interesting, or one of the things that makes the game interesting. And if you really wanted bonus insanity points, the idea that you could just use this walkway here as well. Again, it's probably not going to come up in actual gameplay, but I really like that idea too. Anyway, if this offered you like another route to another area of the map, like maybe this lets you go into middle from here, like you open this up here and somehow close it off so that you can only access it from the boost or from up here. But even then, it's like, it actually only slows you down. So I guess it's just a wrinkle for people to take alternate routes down if they're coming from the A site. Like if you're a CT and you're pushing A and you don't want to push through this area, and you want to instead come over here for information. But even then, very niche, very unlikely to play a pivotal part in any aspect of the map. And as we discussed, does not impact the initial rotation to the A-bomb site at all. So the fact that you need a boost to get up here seems completely pointless. Like, why not just make this a set of stairs? Then, you know, yes, it's a kind of a redundant alternate route, but at least it doesn't require a silly amount of effort to get up here. I mean, maybe I could imagine a CT pushing mid and trying to wrap around, needing a bit more effort to get over here. But I don't know. Also, IMO, in my opinion, in my orangutan, put a fucking ladder up here, dude. Seriously, let me climb all the way up here and take fights from right here. That would be epic. And then you can have like a similar sort of thing over here. Like, there's already a ladder over here. I'm just saying, I think people would like that kind of wacky shit. At least I would. So, anyway, outside of those immediate question marks, really don't know what the fuck this is, and would definitely like to have this be gameplay space instead of just a barrier. Let's continue on in our approach to A. So there's two ways you can go once you hit into this area. Also, a void. So we're going to walk to the right of the void first, and then we'll go back and walk to the left of the void. And this right of the void area is probably one of those areas where you're initially going to have some... First of all, this is completely solid, as you can see. So it is completely impossible to wallbang through that, even with an op. I don't know if I agree with that design decision, but that's how it is right now. So that should factor into your analysis, because this is probably going to be an op duel, where you've got somebody rotating from CT spawn, which is all the way down here. Probably a similar rotation. They probably get here a little bit sooner, and then they can take a fight over here, and I guess you'd call this construction or something, just because that's a call out on some other maps. So yeah. And then obviously you can self-boost up here to get some trippy lights. I don't know what's up with that. And then fall down over here. I guess that's like a trailer or something. And this is left of void. So we can either rotate over into middle, which I'll show later on, or we can just take a right and be on the bomb site. So interestingly enough, the bomb site has two pathways, but neither of them are very direct. In order to get to the bomb site from right of void, we come over here into construction and take this op duel. And then we've got a pretty good angle out onto part of the bomb site over here where it's plantable anywhere on this board, basically. You can't do the steps, but you can do over here. You can't do down here, but you can do up here. So it has to be on this little area right here, this whole board. So you won't be able to do it on the lower part. But obviously you can plant for construction and then hold an angle over here, looking down over there. And you can also plant a little bit deeper or something if you want to, you know, hold from, I guess, CT sandbag or something. I don't know what you would end up calling that. One thing I will say is that I guess some of the props are kind of duplicated a few too many times for my liking, like the sandbag over there and also a sandbag right here. That's going to make callouts a little bit difficult on the map if you're trying to tell people, like, he's sandbags. You know, you might have to say he's construction sandbags or something, and just having to say that is going to add a little bit of a wrinkle there. So far it's not a huge issue, but the fact that there's 3 sandbags in this one area, there's one right there, which again you can't hide behind, but still, and then one right over there means, you know, maybe you have to make some cinder blocks or something over there, or some other type of material over here. I assume the reason why it's sandbags both ways is because he doesn't want you to think that you can wallbang through it. Oh, there's actually 4 because there's some right here. So that's pretty nuts. Yeah, that's probably too many sandbags in the same area. Just, again, trying to think of, like, callouts. Like, you've got spools, aka coffins now. If there were coffins all over the site, that would be pretty hard to say, oh yeah, it's coffins. Talking about Inferno B-side, obviously. So that's something. You can actually self-boost onto these, though. Just a little bit of a crouch jump at the right angle from that little trailer over there. And you're on the flowers. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, you can't plant on any of these. Have to be on the floor. That's fine. Not so much cover on this bomb site, or at least on the approaches to the bomb site. One of the things that I think about this site is it'll be utility-based with a favoring towards T's. If you consider the idea that you're going to come in, right? That's a mag 7. I meant to hit N. I hit M. N for nade. M for noob. So you come over here and you're going to, you know, you think as a CT, you've got a few hiding spots. You've got this little alcove over here where the potted plant is, or the vased plant. And this is most likely going to be a rifler. You wouldn't really want to bring an op in this close quarters situation. So you're actually going to be holding from upper, from long, or whatever you want to call it, from CT sandbags. Which one am I talking about? You fucking decide. You can't climb up here, unfortunately. Like I was saying earlier, it would be really cool, I think, if you had to risk getting peaked. Like if you put a ladder up here and you do your nuke ladder rotation, you get up here, right? And then you kind of climb up here. For one, you're making a lot of sound cues in order to get up here quickly, but you're also putting yourself at the risk of being spotted over from T sandbags from construction. So I think that's an area where you would probably end up seeing a fair bit of risk associated with getting up here. And then, if T's want to take it, they also have to, jump up over here, self-boost, and then go up there. And then they would also have a pretty powerful angle into the bomb site. Maybe you could offset this by putting up a wall onto the right of this area. But you have a pretty strong overlook, not quite strong enough to see all the way over here, obviously. I guess you could boost on top of that, but then you're super vulnerable from literally anywhere else. And the cover over here would do two things. It would neutralize the ability for you to immediately and easily clutch out any sort of bomb defusal, so you can't instantly cover everything, right? So it would really only focus your angle over here. And it would sort of help you as CTs to hold an area down into construction, or I suppose down into like an approach from over here. But even then, it's like you'd probably be covered still, I think. It's hard to really give you a visual inclination as to what I'm talking about because of the fact that we're pretending that this is walled off and that you can actually put a guy here. But, you put a man here, and odds are he's going to be staring out over here, down in construction, and down into the main rotation into the site. He won't really be able to cover anything over here unless he's super vulnerable to any of those other angles. I don't think it would be an OP spot, but the wall over there on this side, I mean, for one, you could make it completely spammable, similar to like the vertigo area, in which case he's super vulnerable anyway, but it would also cover him from anybody who's wrapping from long. So if you're a T holding this position after retake, I think that could add another layer of depth, another layer of Z associated with the map, and suddenly you've got even more verticality just in this one area, which would help to further diversify it from the B bomb site. Because as we're going to see when we go over to the B bomb site, they have a sort of similar thing to this long area where there's another layer to the bomb site where you can go up another level. But it's not like the fact that you stack it onto here and make it spammable and make it kind of focused and require some ladder play, I think would help to set this area apart from the B bomb site that I'll show later on. So anyway, like I was saying earlier, you are going to be looking at a bomb site which mandates a certain amount of utility to take and hold, but because there's more avenues for utility to come in from the T's, and just more avenues more angles that you have to watch as a CT, especially if one team has mid control and another is going to influence it a lot, as we'll talk about when we get to mid. But there's not really too many places to hold onto the site from within the site. And that's like your one and done position that you're going to find a Molotov pretty early on when you scrim. Like this is the entrance into the site from mid, and you can pretty much find some sort of running. Like I'm pretty sure anyway, you can find some sort of like safe thing to take over here. Yeah, so that would flush them out immediately. Like you just again, second try on the Molotov there. You flush this position out completely, and you practice that from enough. That's from a super safe angle as well. Like again, this is going to be sealed off even if that were added, according to my changes that I'm suggesting. And then you just do that, and anybody over there is going to get fucked. You can obviously also smoke out and separate the site in half, similar to what you would do in like vertigo sites if you've been watching that disaster of a map, and then you just run in here and plant. So there's plenty of ways to do like an exec on the site that seals off this area, Molotovs this person, then you flashbang out and you rush across, and you're safe from anybody from upper, and you're safe from anybody anywhere else on the site unless you get spammed down, obviously. That's why you ask for some more flashes. And at this point, you could also ask for somebody to, I guess you can just self-boost yourself up here onto these sandbags to look around. And it's kind of reminiscent of Mirage or also Vertigo A site, where you have a lot of opportunities to look for some plays around. I mean, even if you just rethrow those, just this smoke on here for the demonstration purposes, you kind of have a gap over there. And again, you don't even have to jump. So, you can do something like you crouch up here, right? And then unpeak or uncrouch and then peek, right? And again, it's pretty easy for you to to boost on top of here if you have to. So and even then you are covered from this angle, from this set of sandbags, this upper area, that little extra piece. So you're covered from upper from that sense. I think that that's a pretty powerful position. If you had to, I think you have to hit a B hop in order to actually boost up there from over here. Maybe I'm just bad. B hop or a long jump. Apparently you can boost onto the truck from this angle, which is pretty cool, I guess. So if that extra plank was in here, oh, you can do it anyway. Yeah, so it's possible to hit this. But I like that there's a skill jump associated with that anyway. But I do think that because of the fact that you can cut this site in half pretty easily and the open skyboxes help with that, pretty sure they're open anyway. Yeah, I would say they're probably pretty open. So because of that, you can do crazy shit like that just from a mid take. You can obviously, like, presumably you're going to have one guy construction and one guy in the outer, maybe even two guys in the outer and then one guy in construction, and then the other two would be mid. You know, maybe one would be towards B for the sake of selling the fake or whatever. But you have some mid presence in this case. It kind of feels a little similar to Dust 2 in that sense, just insofar as the fact that there's a lot of room for grenades to rain in and a lot of room for the Ts to execute onto it. And then the CTs basically have to become specialists at responding to that pressure. So in that sense, I do think that this ends up being a T-sided bomb site, whereas the B-bomb site is a little bit more easier for the CTs to defend from within, which doesn't necessarily make it more CT-sided than it does make it T-sided. It's like the easiest metric by which CTs have to judge whether or not a bomb site for them is easy to defend is like, are there positions that I can take that I can still fall back into safer positions, but all of them are within the effective area of the bomb site? If that's the case, CTs have a better time because they can play a little bit of a forward position, get a kill or get information, and then fall back and still be in an advantageous position, which is sort of similar to like Inferno B site. Banana control is super important, but if you at least have somebody who's at like the half wall or something on the CT side of things, or even at worst case scenario, they're like peeking from the CT smoke position and they spot some information, even if they don't get a kill, they just get some damage off, or just at worst, again, you get the information. That is still super useful because of the fact that they can then reposition and still be useful on the site. So that's the sort of thing that you don't really see in this particular area. The best you can do is be far away, like the equivalent of being at T steps in Inferno, in order to spot somebody over here. Because if you're over here, you're probably just going to get flashed off and killed. And again, if you try to run back from here, you're probably again going to get killed just based on the fact that there's a lot of distance here. So you would need somebody to be able to hold a position. I guess they could be like on top of this hut over here. Oh yeah, a fifth set of sandbags. Perfect. So yeah, they could be like, you could have some guy over here and then, another dude standing right here down here. And that could all help you. That could all be fine and dandy. That assumes that nobody or somebody else is holding construction though. So I guess you'd probably have a construction player, back over here, holding an angle over here. And then if the contact player down here says something, you could also rotate over here to try to cover him. But again, this all is like best case scenario, and at work, and even if that is the best case scenario, and you assuming you do have the 2A, 1 mid, 1 2B, or 2A, 2 mid, 1B scenario where your team allocation is on the CT side, you're still in a situation where you have to take control away from the CTs, or you have to like lose map control yourself by way of falling back from an angle, holding onto the construction area in order to focus your attention over here. It's more like, even if you were up here where bot punch is, and you did have this angle at your disposal, you could hold this angle, which again, it's not super great. Like you have to wait for them to overextend. And then you could move your crosshair over here to cover your guy from your contact player or something like that if he was playing up. But even just doing this, even just moving from here to here, opens you up to a lot of really shitty situations. So either your guy gets traded or fucked over trying to retreat and you get a kill over here. Maybe that can still be advantageous for you. But like either you lose something over on the right-hand side of the bomb site where the main outer entrance is, or you lose something over here in construction by moving your attention over here. So that really goes regardless of whether or not you add this extra spot in up here. And that's another thing that I think favors the idea of the T's having more control, and sort of similar to, I guess, the A bomb site on Dust 2, despite the fact that obviously it's much more this bomb site is much more self-contained in general. And it goes without saying, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to find some sick-ass lineups that go through that. This little clock tower or bell tower in here. And then obviously you can throw nades through here and throw them above. So, cool. Cool stuff there. But yeah, that's pretty much the A-bomb site. Like I said earlier, I feel pretty strongly about working this architecture in, which appears very heavily in this area of the map. Being able to work it into an environment where you're actually like taking fights with it instead of just using it as cover and or like stopgaps or whatever. I'm pretty sure you can spam through it. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to have a lot of it allows for a lot of penetration. It doesn't have a lot of like resistance to it, which adds another layer over here because obviously you're going to be able, well, not in that case, but you should be able to, oh, I guess not, huh? Wait, really? Well, there's sandbags over there. But you really can't, hold on. Let me put a man over here. What's my uncrouch key? There we go. Wow. It really doesn't let you do any damage through the walls. So never mind, it's not even spammable. So yeah, again, it's not really impacting gameplay as much as it is serving as a wall. Like, this is going to sound a little abstract and not necessarily connected directly to this map, but I like to imagine scenery as accomplishing two things. It facilitates a gameplay purpose, and it fulfills a thematic purpose. It tells a story visually, and it also facilitates what you can and can't do in terms of gameplay. It provides something or removes something or something like that. So walls, in general, should do both of these things. And I think that if you can make something have more value than just a barrier, while also telling a story and keeping things thematic for whatever your map happens to be, that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I don't really see that in here. Like, yes, you have the wall, and yeah, sure, some of it's like open in terms of you being able to throw, certain flashes and other stuff through the certain areas over here. But without being able to actually use these ladders to get up and around and stuff, which I think would add, a really interesting layer. And yes, there's fall damage, and yes, you'll probably see people, noobs mostly, kill themselves a lot. I still think it would add another wrinkle and add another, reinforce the importance of this bit of scenery. Because otherwise, particularly since you can't spam through it in any meaningful way outside of this right-hand side in construction into the main site, and sure, people will find uses for that, but I feel like we're missing something here. And it would be really cool to have some more of a reason to work around this area and work with it and actually turn it into a tool for people. So, yeah, this whole midsection can remain closed off from gameplay, but if you just open up this as a nest for snipers and this as a nest for snipers, both on the T side and the CT side, I think suddenly you have a whole different ballgame on your hands. Maybe that's not where they want the gameplay to go, but that's one of the things that I've been thinking about it ever since I started playing on this map initially is, it would be really neat, I think, if you had a bit more interaction with this very common bit of scenery, and that it was able to reinforce whatever this is, this whole construction area, reinforce it as something that you're using to your advantage as opposed to something that's just separating pieces of the bomb site. So, yeah, that's my spiel. So this is the A long into CT spawn. Obviously, it's a very long area. And there appears to be a lot of trees out there. Don't look at those. They might hurt your eyes. And again, like I said when I came in here initially with the whole spiel about the lo-fi graphics or whatever, I pretty much immediately went from CT into the B-bomb site. And admittedly, this is another interesting element of the game, is that as soon as you come into CT spawn, you're very, very close to the B-bomb site, which naturally favors CTs based on the rotations. But you'll see why it also favors CTs in terms of the angle stuff that I was talking about later. It's just that the beans, oh boy, the problem here is pretty obvious. They just bleed right into the ground. So hopefully that can be resolved. And the same sort of thing is happening over here. So hopefully that can be fixed, because it looks pretty ugly. But beyond that, the two levels of this particular bomb site are, you know, they're not sandbags anymore, they're coffee bags. So the coffee bags allow you to self-boost up over here. You can also just get up to this upper level by taking a right instead of a left. And this means that there's another layer of confusion to the bomb site for T's, where there's a lot more angles to check, right? But again, if you drop down, you can't get back up without a boost, which I think is interesting. You'll still see every silver in the book taking this fight, dropping down and then holding this angle or something. Though at the point where you reach this is also around the same time that the CTs can have their eyes on you, so you want to be careful about that in terms of the rotations. I think it's still CT side favored, but you want to be careful about it because they'll at least be able to hear the audio cue of you falling, and so they'll be able to make some sort of educated guess. Unfortunately, you can't self-boost up there. That would be pretty broken, though. That would be pretty even more confusing for the T's. Oh. I'm not sure if this is intended, but you can stick yourself in over here. It's probably not what they wanted. I don't mind this little elevation here, but yeah, that extra bit is exceptionally confusing. Although it's not very helpful, admittedly. It's like more when they go to check this, they'll be very surprised. This seems to be sending me into the air as well, so there's probably some clipping that needs to be cleaned up. But yeah, otherwise, you know, it's a fairly straightforward bomb site, similar to the other one in that you have to be on this upraised platform. Oh yeah, the lore for this, quote-unquote lore for this map is that the terrorists are dissatisfied with the quality of the coffee, so they're blowing it up. Somewhat funny, I think. Pretty good stuff. And yeah, this is the T entrance to B. And again, we've completely circumvented mid for the most part, but that's just how it is. We'll go to mid eventually. I do want to point out that even though, like, this little extra bit here, I like that it's here, but I feel like it could be reinforced in the gameplay more if perhaps this whole area of architecture was moved a little bit to the right so that this gate started around here where that trim is. And so you'd basically like remove this entirely or just make it a part of that. And if you did that, then there's more space for you to move in over here before you hit this barrier. You'd probably move the barrier up a little bit too, but you're basically extending this wall. And I think at that point, it becomes a bit more pertinent for CTs to have to clear this angle when they're approaching. And maybe even if you added some cover that faces over here, CTs could poke out for information. And then just by virtue of them potentially being sitting behind here, you know, with a rifle holding an angle and listening for information, that would have to be something that the T's themselves check. Just an idea, not necessarily, especially the cover thing and making it something that T's would have to check if they were returning. Maybe not necessarily the biggest of deals. I do like the truck out here. I think that adds a little bit of cover that's welcome. And of course, a particularly aggressive counter-terrorist could sit right here and await their judgment. But one of the other things that I think is kind of interesting is you don't even really see the feet unless, like, you'd basically have to do something like this where you're shift walking in and then you'd be able to see the feet over here. But again, they can neutralize that just by standing behind the pallets over here. So in order to avoid their feet being seen, they would have to be pushed sufficiently up. And so you could still like check that angle over here. Though obviously they could be pressed up against you, looking back at you, waiting for you to strike. Or waiting to strike on you, I guess. And so, anyway, I think that extending this angle out here a little bit will make it more useful for T's to hold, like a lurk T or something to hold and see if CTs are pushing. And especially if he could have some sort of line of sight onto the rotation to middle, which takes you up this little nook and cranny, and will eventually take you all the way to the A-bomb site. This is the other end of that A hallway that we were talking about earlier. So eventually, like, this is interesting insofar as it's a connector basically from one bomb site to another. Well, usually it you know, there'll be a connector from you know, mid to another bomb site or something. But I like that there's like a little bit of a, oh, you could boost onto that. Cool. That's like a Zeus spot basically. I think that there's another interesting wrinkle to the map based on the fact that you have, you know, this multivaried connector that has 3 different entrances, one of them on B, one of them on A, and then this one more in middle. So yeah, let's just talk about middle and then we'll wrap up the overall understanding of the map. Before I do that, I guess I should talk a little bit more about the bomb sites. No, you cannot pop those. They do not break. That's something that I don't really feel that great about, but I understand the idea is to make a contrast. At least this is what I'm assuming it is. The idea is to make a contrast in terms of what's possible to take with utility. This is more of like an angle deathmatch type bomb site. And again, you still can use, I'm sure there'll be executions that you can find. The idea is basically to use the T-sided version of the T-side entrance, right? This being the entrance that T's will get to first. This is almost your secondary entrance into the map, or into this area. And you actually want to take this area's map control mostly so you can take it, you can secure connector. As I was just showing earlier, CTs can get to this area relatively quickly. So if we go over here, we can just walk right up here and take a right. This is the other area of the bomb site. We open that very, very noisy door, and then we can just jump straight up here. And obviously I failed to jump that time because I'm an idiot, but that's basically what you can do. Notably, this is not a jump that you can make by yourself. You need a buddy to boost you in here if you need it. So Ts can use that to their advantage if they take sufficient map control, remembering that the T spawn is just right over here. So Ts will spawn, and then they'll be able to just come down here. Two of them could come down here and take a mid fight. The mid rotation will probably be like you'll be around here as a T, and when the CTs can make contact. So this is basically the contact point. Although CTs can get a little bit further, they can be like over here. But either way, it's the same kind of angle for the Ts, and I guess for the CTs as well. So you're going to want to throw flashes over here and maybe pop yourself out or something like that. Maybe even smoke. Find a smoke for this particular area, and then you can put two guys over here. One of them can be boosted up here. Obviously, just as a CT, again, you can open this very noisy door and take an angle over here. I actually foresee a number of people will be opening that door once and then just walking away and not even holding the angle, or immediately trying to do something like this where they prep themselves for a jump into here. Again, you can't make this jump without making noise. Unless I guess you could boost, right? The silent boost is something we have seen before. Unfortunately, he's stuck, so he won't crouch. So I'll just jump onto him. But in theory, you'd be able to, silently boost, right? Wait, what's the uncrouch button? Here we go. Although, would I even need him to uncrouch? I don't think so. Yeah, so I wouldn't even need him to uncrouch at that point. That way there's no sound at Q at all. And then I can just roll in here. So in theory, you could just send two people over here, make the door noise, and then have one of them being here. And then the Ts may not be the wiser if they come out here and see that guy and he runs back or something. He could even just come out here, boost you, and then run back in and close the door. And then they think maybe he left. So there's things that you can do without making any noise to rotate somebody up here and then have them, him be a surprise in the T ankle. Also, I just fucking crowed myself. But I like the fact that no matter really where you are on the bomb site, or on the map rather, you're going to want to have control over this connector area. Even though it's kind of linear with this particular path, and there's not a lot going on there, I like the fact that you can do that anyway. And this is bangable, interestingly enough. Hey, bananas. Oh, well, physics. Bangable and bananable. I think it's bananable. Chuck, why aren't you taking damage, you asshole? What the fuck? There we go. I figured it out. I was just missing him. So, yeah, you could definitely have some fun shooting Chuck. And so that's one of those things where you'll probably see people check that if they suspect, if a T suspects that somebody's up here, they can just roll out here with an AK and just start completely Swiss cheesing the windows. Unfortunate that the windows themselves don't pop to reveal anything, but naturally, if they did, that would be a pretty obvious tell of somebody being in there. T-sided tell as well. So I like that it exists anyway, and I guess there is not really a corollary for the CTs to wallbang through, but that's okay. I think that's a neat level, added layer of interactivity, of gameplay. So I like that. But despite that fact, it is still very linear. It is still very straight. And, Traps are gay. But I like the fact that there's something here for both teams to use, and that both teams actually want to use. That gives both teams an advantage. It's one thing to have something give one team an advantage, and then as a result, the other team wants to deny that team an advantage. If something gives terrorists a sort of innate advantage in taking more map control in the future, then the onus is on the CTs to make sure that the terrorists don't get that. And that's sort of what advantage the CTs get, is by holding control of that, they negate an advantage that the Ts could be getting. In this case, the window area, the whole, pretty much the whole connector, is something that will be useful for CTs in rotating, as well as, of course, useful for Ts in rotating. And if they can control it, and they can, they can even like do some cheeky ass like one and done boost on top of the fridge or on top of the sink, and take an angle and then fall back. That's something that they can do. There's all sorts of different things that they can do, and I could see a lot of really exciting fights happening exactly right here. And that is something that will be useful for everybody, for the Ts and for the CTs. And that's one of those things that I think really adds a lot of value to that side of the map. And also, of course, as a result, adds a lot of value to the pathways that take you to those areas of the map. So again, to recap the areas into that area, the connector, there is a contact point over here where, because of the fact that you're demanding that CTs go through their rotation to get over here, and then maybe try to hold this angle to see if anybody's running into the connector from the A side. That is a contact point and can be flashed off and can be smoked off. Like, I'm sure you can find some loosey-goosey smoke that does something like this, and then allows you to get in here. And again, if you're over here trying to stop them, you have to peek out real far to see anything. And even then, it's like, yeah, you can see stuff, but somebody can just throw the smoke better than I did, I guess, to completely block that off. And the idea is that if you want to just smoke that just to get connector control so that you can then pivot towards one of the other sides, you can. And most importantly, if you manage as Ts to completely annihilate the guy over here, or the guy who's sitting here, assuming there's a connector guy on the CT side, which there probably will be, like, you almost do want to do 2A, 2B, or 2A, 2 mid, and 1B. And then one of the guys that's part of the 2 mid would be in connector, or would be sitting here, holding this, right? So you'd have a mid guy and a mid cheating towards connector guy. And so like the mid guy might be over here playing around this area, playing around arches or the box, or he might even be further back and he might be doing something like this, taking the first peek like the opper could hold here, while there's a rifler in the connector side of things, holding something like this, or something more audacious like this. And they could be, that could be a good unit together, where again, as Ts, you're going to have to find some way to basically utility or grenade yourself out of that hole. But again, if the terrorists end up taking control of connector, they can threaten so many areas of the map so quickly. And if they do end up taking control of this particular area into connector, the CT side of connector, they can threaten B super easily. And they can have somebody, 2 people in spawn heading towards B from the terrorist side. And they can then have somebody wrapping all the way around, maybe even infiltrating it over here, like smoking off CT spawn, and then infiltrating up here to try to pick the guy who's holding upper. Like, there's a lot of layers to that. Even though I don't think this is a site that's super easy or even attractive for terrorists to take, the fact that the connector is so pivotal means that, for one, the way that the map's designed, I expect, again, you'll have a dedicated B anchor who's not challenged too often. And it'll be sort of like Vertigo, where teams are going to be pressuring A and they're really only going to pivot to B based on mid-round calls. That's probably what's going to happen. And again, you'll have people who are like trying to get towards A, and then once it gets very obvious that the CTs are making a read and sending more people towards A or more people towards mid, you can go B once or twice or threaten B to keep them honest in that sense. So it's not that B is useless, or it's not that B won't see a lot of play. It's more that B exists as a way to keep counter-terrorists honest in their defense, and a way for terrorists to diversify their playbook in taking A and in taking connector. Connector is almost as important as a bomb site control in general, because of the fact that it provides you with so much control over the rest of the map. I talked about this earlier about how in Basalt you actually want to take middle more than you want to take one of the bomb sites. As a counter-terrorist, you want to make sure that you have the control of that, because the number of angles of attack middle opens up for you is going to be more valuable than having a lot of presence on the site in general, because it also isolates how many angles you have to worry about the terrorists coming in, which is a big deal. So sort of the similar premise is over here, except there's a bit more freedom in how you approach the connector from the CT side, and thus the onus is on you to prevent the Ts from taking it. And of course, if you do want guaranteed connector control as Ts, you can, have 2 or 3 people go towards B. One of them can lurk, the other 2 can go in here. And there's really nothing that the CTs can do about it, but you also can't really threaten towards the A side of it until you clear off this position over here, which can, of course, be done with like a simple smoke or a simple Molotov, or you bounce it over here, and it spreads pretty much over to everything. So, pretty easy there. But yeah, I like the fact that this is here, and I do think that it opens up another layer of strategy into the map, and one that I think you could reward the T's more for, actually. Like, to go back to our initial observation over in this area in this boost spot, maybe you rework this area into something that will help you take control of the A-side entrance to connector and thus add some value to your playbook. Like, maybe you can, if you boost into this area, you can then boost into, like, self-boost yourself into a drop-down area to get to here faster or something. Like, if you can find some way to add value to this area, then you can justify it requiring a boost. And if you can't find any way to add value to this area, you should probably just put a staircase here and call it a day, because then it can just be an alternate pathway and can still have some value in clutches or whatever. Right now, it's pretty much just a drop down for CTs who are pushing, and something for Ts to get confused at when they first play the map and look at it and be like, are we supposed to use this? And then just rotate around and be like, oh no, we're not supposed to use that. There's no reason to. So that's kind of my spiel on that right now. But I didn't really talk too much about the different angles that you have in middle. That's more something that you should probably just play for yourself and experience. But, they exist. You can obviously dip into these arches and try to hold some fights over here. Particularly if you're a CT and you're holding for somebody who's going to be popping out of the area over here, the connector, you can hold a pretty cheeky angle like I was just showing off. But you do have to worry about anybody rotating through the T-mid area, so definitely something to keep an eye on. But I could see doubles, maybe a double op setup or something, where one of the ops is over here and the other op is on the A site, and then you'll have a fair bit of room over here where you got 2 mid, and maybe nobody even bothers with the connector setup, and a rifle guy is going to cover their opper. Or the operator comes over here and the rifle guy covers the connector area. I could see something like that. And obviously I can see positions that put a premium on CT control of the connector area as well. But given all the complexity on the connector area, maybe it makes sense why there is an added complexity where there's some sniper spots over here. But I still think that would add another layer to the A-bomb site. And provide both teams with more tools to execute onto it. And yes, there would need to be some balancing with regards to what angles are possible to take. Like if you're over here, I actually don't think it gives you too many tools. It really just allows you to equalize on the CT sniper, and is a little bit easier to hit him with the current cover setup that you have than it is for him to hit you. But at the same time, you could obviously tweak that and make the angle a little bit more even in terms of which teams can benefit from it. But from this position, you can't see too much. Obviously, you could see a pretty clear shot over here onto anybody who's over there. So that, again, maybe you would want to lower this platform if you did decide to take that suggestion so that they can't have an easy shot onto literally everybody. But even then, it's a pretty long rotation, a noisy rotation. And if you make it so that it takes a while for the CTs to get into position, which it already would, if you just took this exact same architecture, they climb up this ladder, and then they have to take this very long, fairly long path that's probably going to take them a second and a half just to get into position with the op. And that's just so that they can get a good peek off against the sniper and against anybody who's over here in the CT sandbag, upper area. Whereas you can just hide behind the sandbags and bait them out, or you can, take positions on the site. Sure, there's going to be, in theory, there could be a CT-sided smoke that would land about here. And I think that this could be really cool gameplay-wise, and I would really like to see that utilized. And obviously the same for over here, right? And of course somebody's going to find some smoke that lands on top of the CT side of things and smokes that off, or maybe they land over here. I'm not sure if that would actually smoke them off, though. But anyway, I like the idea, even though it was my idea. So whatever, make of that what you will. As far as the rest of the map, I think it's pretty cool. It is missing something. I'm not quite sure what, but the connector area seems like a really good, solid experiment. I'm really happy about that. Some angles could definitely be tightened up, like I was talking about over here on the outer B. I think if you pushed this barrier forward, you had a little bit more utility to this area. Maybe you could add something else that the T's could do, like sort of similar to the Inferno flash out of B apartments, or A apartments rather. You'd be able to like maybe throw a flashbang through here, and it could bounce through like a window over here or something. And I mean, it wouldn't flash over there, but the idea is like you could do some sort of lineup, and you throw that flash that way, and it could, you know, catch anybody who is holding like over here, or something like that. Or maybe like flash upper over here, and if it flashes above this window, maybe it flashes them too. I don't know if that already happens. Kind of hard to test, but it looks like it might. Oh yeah, it actually does. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's enough then, because that's a more guaranteed flashbang anyway. So I like the fact that you can at least flash through these windows, because then maybe you could even throw flashes like directly above the site and get people. But yeah, as long as something like that is possible, then you could even do some fairly dry eco rounds or something where you throw a couple of flashbangs and then you just save a smoke for the plant. You know, you could even in theory like throw those flashbangs and then, I mean, again, you can't really find a smoke for that area without exposing yourself, but the idea that you could potentially smoke this off, or you could even go the other way, I guess, which would be more likely anyway, is you could find some smoke that would land, you know, something like this, and you'd throw that smoke, and it would smoke off, you know, ideally it would land a little bit closer to the middle of the area, and it would smoke off anybody over here, and then you could just boost up here, and suddenly, you know, you're in business, right? So there's ways to get into the site with minimal utility, especially once we combine those flashbangs that I was talking about earlier with the something to flash off anybody holding this angle. And then you can smoke off over there, take a fight over here where this guy's isolated from any backup. And then again, the fact that this bomb site is the way it is means that at first you're probably going to have somebody who's cheating towards middle from B and then a dedicated B guy. And eventually, depending on whether or not teams actually do try to take B or whether or not teams try to take A instead, that will dictate where the T's, or rather where the CT defense ends up favoring. But most of the time, I think, you know, they're going to want to hold on to connector control, and they're going to, you know, obviously the CTs themselves have a really short rotation to the flank if they decide to come out over here. So it's very, very simple, I think, to take and hold B if you also have connector control, and that goes for either team. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's neat. I think there's a lot of potential in this particular map. And they try some interesting ideas, and they have some other interesting ones that they could try with regards to this sniper idea that I had. And even if they don't take that, I think the map is still in a pretty strong state. I don't know what it's missing exactly. I don't know even if this would fix, you know, what I feel is missing, because I can't really articulate what I feel is missing precisely. I just feel like maybe there's, you know, this area definitely feels redundant. Maybe you could even put the ladder that brings you up over here to the sniper area in this particular area so that there's a utility in boosting your opera up there or something. But besides this redundant area, and besides moving this whole barrier over a little bit to add more utility to this area, those are like the two very, very simple suggestions that I have for this map that I think would help it. And then I guess we would just need a lot of playtests to figure out what else needs to be done. But if you wanted to get super crazy, do the sniper idea. Definitely change out the props so that there's not sandbags literally everywhere. There's already enough coffee bags over here, so that already kind of fucks with me. And maybe adding some more props over here to, and obviously cleaning up the coffee, because that, I know it's supposed to be messy, but it doesn't look messy. It just looks like an afterthought. So fixing that up, and then adding some more props to some of these areas to help people get some sort of visual understanding of the, like what the map is meant to be and what a certain area is meant to be would be helpful. I'm trying to see if you can, oh, you can get up here, so that's cool. I could definitely see people using this to their advantage, in retakes especially. But yeah, obviously there were some clipping issues that we had over there as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else before I sign off, but I don't think so. I think that's it. Map is pretty nice, and surprisingly so. Happy to have had some time to break it down for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see some solid, if not supremely exciting changes to this particular map. And with that, I'm out of here.